Another area where she's apparently sticking close to the formal president of the United States is a new call to completely destroy the Supreme Court. So Joe Biden put out an op-ed in the Washington Post, clearly not written by him because he can no longer actually write words, in which he suggested that the Supreme Court has to be completely overthrown because they're doing things he doesn't like. So let's be real about this. For my entire lifetime and that of my parents, the Supreme Court has been effectively a left-wing tool of jurisprudence. For about 4 years, it has not. And immediately the Democrats are like, hey, that institution, we should just completely burn it down. So Joe Biden, he suggests a bunch of changes to the Supreme Court. He wants a constitutional amendment called the No One is Above the Law Amendment. It would make clear there is no immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office. Now, that is ridiculous. That's ridiculous because there has to be some immunity for the president of the United States. Otherwise, Joe Biden will be brought up on many, many charges. There are many things you could bring Joe Biden up on, from corruption to his prosecution of foreign policy that ends with dead Americans. Then he says we have to have term limits for Supreme Court justices. A rich odor coming from the rankly dead president of the United States. His corpse is moldering, and he's calling for term limits for people younger than he is. Finally, he wants a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. Implemented by whom? Implemented by whom? The executive, who will just invoke that to get rid of justices that he doesn't particularly like? Here is Joe Biden trying to suggest these words out of a face hole that no longer functions properly. He says, we need these bold proposals.
The court is not self-policing. The court is not dealing with the obvious conflicts of interest. We need a mandatory code of ethics for the Supreme Court, and we need it now. My fellow Americans, based on all my experience, I'm certain we need these reforms. We need these reforms to restore trust in the courts, preserve the system of checks and balances that are vital to our democracy.
Hey, none of this is going to happen. All of it's ridiculous. Biden is proposing it, and Harris is backing it. Here's a statement from Vice President Kamala Harris on Supreme Court reforms. I point out at this point, Kamala Harris has done 0 major interviews, 0, since she was announced as the nominee last week. It has been fully a week and a half since Joe Biden dropped out of the race and Kamala Harris effectively became the Democratic nominee. She has done 0 press conferences, 0 interviews, taken 0 questions. Instead, she's putting out formal statements. She's running Joe Biden's basement strategy just with rallies. It's a smart strategy because the more people see of her, the more they dislike her. I'm amused by the idea that she's radically jumped in popularity. Oh my God, she's so popular now. No, she isn't. She went from 35% popularity to 44% popularity. I may not be amazing at math, but I do know that 44 is less than 50. A majority of Americans still disapprove of Kamala Harris. They don't like her all that much. She put out a statement saying, quote, in the course of our nation's history, trust in the Supreme Court of the United States has been critical to achieving equal justice under law. President Biden and I strongly believe the American people must have confidence in the Supreme Court. Yet today, there's a clear crisis of confidence facing the Supreme Court as its fairness has been called into question after numerous ethics scandals and decision after decision overturning long-standing precedent. It's the last part that matters. They got a bunch of decisions they don't like. Therefore, it's time to burn down the Supreme Court. These are the people who say Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and the institutions, and they are ready to full-on burn down the Supreme Court because they didn't get what they wanted, like children who are taking their ball home after everybody else is playing with it. That is why President Biden and I are calling on Congress to pass important reforms. In our democracy, no one should be above the law, says Kamala Harris. Just ridiculous. Ridiculous stuff. So again, she's just as radical as Joe Biden. She's more radical than Joe Biden in a wide variety of ways. And that should be what Donald Trump is focusing on. Well, if the white dudes for Kamala have their way, she'll be elected president of the United States. And that would mean, of course, climbing crime rates, which is why now you might want to think about getting a Burna. I'm about as pro-Second Amendment as it gets, but the thought of using lethal force, it's not like the ideal if you can avoid it. Also, God forbid, you don't want to make a mistake and use deadly force against somebody you didn't need to. Introducing the Burna Ungun, the non-lethal self-defense platform. Lightweight, simple to use. It uses an easy-to-load 5-round magazine and is powered by an 8-gram CO2 cartridge. Burna launchers fire a 68 caliber chemical-filled projectile using patented pull-pierce technology, where the CO2 canister is only punctured on the first trigger pull. That means your launcher is always at the ready. It's capable of incapacitating an attacker for over 30 minutes. It's accurate and effective at over 60 feet. It requires no permits, no background checks. It is interstate travel friendly. With Burna, you will be prepared to defend. The Burna is a safer, more sensible alternative that could potentially save lives on both sides, protecting both user and aggressor. Visit Burna.com/Ben for 10% off your purchase. That's BYRNA.com/Ben. Check out the latest news about Burna. That's BYRNA.com/Ben. Again, Burna.com/Ben for 10% off your purchase. Now, the Kamala Harris campaign is fighting back on the truth that she is a flip-flopping radical by attempting to present a moderate face via a VP pick. That is probably why the frontrunners in the VP race right now for the Democrats are people like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who is widely perceived as a moderate from a swing state, or perhaps Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. They both tried to make their pitch for why they should be VP last night. Here was Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. He was making the case that Donald Trump is afraid to debate Kamala. This is one of the most annoying lines. It's super, super annoying. And Kamala Harris is now suggesting that Donald Trump is chicken because he's not agreeing to the same terms that he gave Joe Biden. Now, I noticed that Joe Biden is not Kamala Harris. One is an old, dead white man, and one is the brand spanking, shiny new Democratic presidential nominee. Obviously, you're not going to accept the same conditions because they are completely different candidates. But the idea being promoted here by the Kamala Harris campaign and by her surrogates is that Donald Trump is somehow afraid of her. He's not afraid of her. He took a bullet to the ear. I don't think that Donald Trump is afraid of much. Donald Trump will debate her. It'll be fascinating. But here's Josh Shapiro trying to play this game.
He's not just afraid to debate her because he knows she's going to kick his ass in the debate. She is a skilled debater. But he's afraid to debate her because he's afraid of his record. He's afraid of having to defend a record that has been really dangerous and destructive.
And so that's Josh Shapiro doing his audition. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, she did her audition as well, suggesting that we need everybody at the table, including cat lovers and dog lovers. Again, this is the rip on J.D. Vance, is the cat lady thing. You're going to try and stick this to him like toilet paper to a shoe walking out of a restroom. Here we go.
Now, I got to take a minute to talk about the guy who joined his ticket a couple weeks ago. Oh, you heard of him, did you? J.D. Vance, yeah. He's really made his values clear lately. He does not see women as equals. He does not want everyone to have a seat at the table. He's scared of us. Because Democrats, we want everyone to have a seat at the table. I mean, even cat lovers and dog lovers alike.
Again, she's auditioning. If they're trying to drive out the single lady vote, then Gretchen Whitmer would be sort of the out-of-the-box pick. A lot of people are saying Josh Shapiro. Problem is that he's a Jew. Democrats got a problem with that in this day and age. So Gretchen Whitmer is a very likely VP pick, even though she's already said she doesn't want it. She's the governor of Michigan. She's clearly auditioning. Michigan is a state that Kamala Harris has to win. It's also a very competitive state because of its demographics. Another candidate that they are thinking about is Tim Walz. I do not think it'll be Tim Walz. Tim Walz, I don't even know why he's being elevated at this point. The Minnesota governor, he doesn't win her estate. He's not a good governor. Minnesota is a poorly governed state under Tim Walz. Also, he has a bunch of statements in the past talking about the magic of socialism.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the damn work.
One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Well, I mean, killing the kulaks is definitely a form of neighborliness, I suppose. When you kill your neighbors, socialism is just neighborliness. I do not think it'll be him. Roy Cooper, the North Carolina governor, has pulled out of consideration as Harris's running mate. So he was considered a high possibility. The final three seem to be coming down right now to Mark Kelly in Arizona, the senator from Arizona, because it's a swing state, as well as Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. There's been some weird talk about Senator Gary Peters. I don't really see what that brings that Whitmer does not. And Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. All of them attempts to moderate. This is why I don't think Walz is going to be the candidate. Because, again, Kamala Harris has to lie about her positioning, and Democrats have to keep saying weird over and over and over. Are you tired of the lies and the twist of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.